reaches the end of its life, its remainings are kept within the ecosystem wherever possible thanks to recycling. These can be productively used again and again, thereby creating further value. According to United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, a circular economy entails markets that give incentives to reuse products rather than scrapping them and then extracting new resources. In an economy such as clothes, scrap metal, and obsolete electronics are used more efficiently. This can be this can provide a way to not only protect the environment but use the natural resources more wisely, develop new sectors, create jobs, and develop new capabilities, which also bring costs down to recycling. I think for the rest, I will leave it for the event and for the speaker to take it further. This was just to set a context. It gives me great pleasure today and an honor rather to introduce Mr. Suresh Prabhu. Mr. Suresh Prabhu is a renowned chartered accountant, banker, corporator, policy maker, strategist, change leader, senior politician, and former senior parliamentarian of India. He has held 10 important cabinet portfolios in Government of India, including industry, power, environment and forest, railways, civil aviation, commerce and industry, and fertilizers and chemicals. Additionally, he has served as the Prime Minister's Sherpa to the G7 and G20, playing a crucial role in shaping the government's official agenda for the G7 and G20 summits. He is also a Chancellor of Rishihood University and a visiting professor at the London School of Economics. He has been a prolific speaker, delivering more than 5,000 lectures on education, economics, climate change, international relations, geopolitics, international trade, rural development, public policy, energy, and sustainable development. He has traveled to over 120 countries across all continents, visited all states in India, and explored nearly 80% of the districts in the country. One of the most widely traveled person that I have known. Normally, people talk about international travel, but look at him, the way he has traveled within India. He has been connected with more than 100 rural community organizations and has been working on rural development projects in rural areas in India for the past 26 years. And last but not the least, he's from Maharashtra, but he has a very close personal relationship with Gujarat, with Ahmedabad city. There is no word in English that I know what explains his relationship, but he is a Samdi of Ahmedabad city. His son is married to a girl from Ahmedabad. So I, I welcome Mr. Suresh Prabhu, and over to you, sir, for the talk. So before that, sorry, so much keen to hear him talk, I overlooked the formality of giving the memento to him.
ये नीचे करके चलेगा नहीं ठीक है So good evening, friends, and thank you very much, my dear friend Rajiv ji, for saying so many things about me, and I was trying to listen to him. Who is the person you are talking about? So thank you for all this, and thank you for this opportunity of being here again at Ahmedabad Management Association. I have been here a few times, also in the neighboring IIM. Actually, right now I am also issuing it for one of the IIMs in Ranchi. So IIMs is something which I am connected with, and at IIMA, I don't know how many times I must have spoken. So it's a very close association, and I'm very happy that I'm here today. And this is a part of a management week. So I think this is another great idea to bring together people from different streams and talking about a common theme about managing very complex issues. So I'm really honored to be here. This is a very interesting topic, as you were trying to explain, circular economy and managing growth with sustainability. When my dear friend Karthik is here, he will always be auditing what I'm saying, so I have to be careful in what I'm. So one, actually, really speaking, many terminologies, many nomenclatures that we use, we many times don't know where it comes from. See, for example, there is a, if you go to the neighboring business school, and I'm sure there will be a very big part of program on startups. And they would say the startups can succeed only when there is an ecosystem. And then they'll give example of what Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is successful because there are IP professionals like both of you. There are persons who nurture it. There are persons, so there are accelerators, there are incubators, there are people who will finance it, there are people who market it, all this. So they say this is the kind of ecosystem that is there, and because of that ecosystem, startups can succeed. So we are now accepted ecosystem as a very important thing. They say business can succeed when there is ecosystem. You cannot have automobile industry if there is no ecosystem. There has to be somebody has to make spare parts, somebody has to make seats, somebody has to make color for the cars, somebody has to make different components. Then only actually the car can be assembled. Because car is not manufactured, it is assembled actually. We have so many components come together, you assemble it. So we say that ecosystem. So ecosystem is important. So we think we are now come to accept ecosystem as a necessary prerequisite for a success of so many different activities. But where this ecosystem term comes from? And my friend will tell you, actually, ecosystem is something which is born out of ecology. If you really look at the entire ecological system, there are very big trees. The tree is as tall as probably you might see that they are touching the skies. If you go to Amazon forest, one of the countries that I visited among these 120 is Amazon. And if you go there, we'll see tallest trees. Of course, in even India, we go to northeast, even in Arunachal Pradesh, there are fantastic forests. And so, but at the same time, in the same forest, there will be small little shrub. There are some small little trees. So just imagine, we sometimes feel what a tree and what is this small little shrub. But that's probably that big tree will not be able to survive if this entire system is not functioning in that particular period. If you look at it, we see big rivers. And of course, Mississippi is a big river. Yangtze in China is a big river. Our Brahmaputra is so big. You go to Assam and you see Brahmaputra, you may think it is an ocean. It's not a, and that's where Bhupen Hazarika had written that very famous poem about why my mother Brahmaputra, how can it become so ferocious during floods? But these big rivers, could they become big if there are no small little streams which would have actually joined that? And that's how the big river becomes a river. And that ultimately, of course, the river is, all rivers meet the ocean. But all these small little things contribute to a great extent this entire system to function. So the ecosystem, the small is important as much as the big is important. And the big would never have become big if there was no small. And this is the example I keep giving for the small industries. We say these big industries are very important because they generate so many jobs. But if there's no small industry, can the big industry survive? And therefore, this entire concept of ecosystem comes out of ecology. So whole idea that we think now we are ecosystem is necessary for startup to succeed, ecosystem necessary for big industry to succeed. You cannot have formulation industry, which is pharmaceuticals. For formulation, you need bulk drugs. Bulk drug is chemical. So if you need chemical industry for having a pharmaceutical industry, that's a part of ecosystem. But we don't understand that ecosystem is necessary. But where do we get this idea of ecosystem? From ecology, from nature. The same way, this whole idea of circular economy, where did you get this idea from? As you correctly mentioned, it has to go back. So, in fact, there is a very interesting book which is called Cradle to Cradle. Normally, a child is born in cradle, palna जिसको बोलते हैं. We put it in cradle, palna is born there, and then he finally, where does he finally end his life? In a grave. So, cradle to grave is a journey of a normal human being. So, there was somebody who wrote a book. He said, why not make cradle to cradle? Why not make a child which is born in, of course, we also believe, at least some part of our philosophy believes, that everybody is reborn. You may be reborn in some other form. So, actually speaking, nobody dies. Nobody dies. You are actually there, but soul is intact. Soul always travels from one place to another. So, that is what we believe in. So, that is actually speaking a kind of a recycling circular economy, not economy, but circular life. But in that book, he mentions cradle to cradle. So one of my previous responsibilities many years ago is to advise United Nations Industrial Development Organization, based in, and we had worked on this project cradle to cradle, in which can the product, it is now connected only to industry, can a product born in cradle, why should end in graveyard or in a scrap yard? Why not we actually make everything work together? Now, to make that happen, there are many steps to be taken. First of all, you must design a product in such a way that if you don't design it rightly, how can you ultimately recycle it? Because you must design it in such a way that each part of that can be recycled and can be put into motion again and can be put into reuse. So this is something, but I'm talking about. So this is what you are really. I'm very happy that you mentioned that, and I think you explained it so well. But point I'm saying is, now this circular idea, where we must have got it from? See, ultimately, all of us are products of nature. So somebody who is a very good poet, somebody who's a very good writer, somebody who's a very good painter, where his best creativity in him comes out when he goes as close as possible to the nature. You go to close to nature and suddenly he becomes so creative. So ultimately, it's a nature which actually creates this idea. So if you look at it, the idea of circular economy, essentially, the nature works on circular way. Look at it like this. Takes many of the important aspects of our life. So many things. See, for example, Ahmedabad. Now, of course, the young generation will not believe this. Ahmedabad, once upon a time, was a home to the best textile industry. So now, of course, like Mumbai, we used to be called Manchester of the East because Manchester that time was big textile center of the world. And now there is in Mumbai also, if there are mills on record. If you go there, there is an office of so many different types. There are pubs, there are restaurants, but no mill. So the textile that we wear can be recycled. The energy products, what we rather I was saying not recycling part, but I'm saying many of the products that we get has certain use, but after some time you cannot reuse the same thing. You cannot use the same shirt after 20 years, 30 years. I use shirt, I never discard. So I don't know how many years I use. I always keep, I never discard anything. But point I'm saying is, in most of the natural resources that are available to us, most, they are not, they are exhaustible. Minerals. We have huge deposits of minerals, but how long will last? Maybe 1,000 years, 500 years, but after that they will exhaust. If you talk about any coal, we say India has a big coal stock, 550 years it will last. I was a minister of power, so we used to say we have huge coal stock. 550 years. So, billions of years of life that human beings have lived on this planet, what is 550 years? This is nothing like eyelid time that it takes for an eyelid to function. That's what it is. So most of our resources are actually going to exhaust one day or the other. But there's one resource which, actually speaking, is regenerates itself every year, every season, not year necessarily. And that resource is water. Actually, nature has created a system where water is automatically comes back into this. So we say we lost some water because there was the evaporation. Evaporation is actually the beginning of the process where the new water is going to, new cycle of the water is going to come back to us. So actually, the whole concept of circular idea is actually nature's idea. Nature's bring water, either snow or water as a precipitation. And when what happens? Some of it goes back. The oceans take the to the heat they take back, so the water goes back, but it comes back again. In the next cycle of monsoon, it comes back. And therefore, actually, the circular part of it happens because nature has created that system. Unfortunately, of course, now we thought we are so wise and we are so intelligent and we are so smart that we have destroyed that cycle. And that's why there is a problem. Otherwise, nature had perfect cycle. There was enough water available. There would be, of course, drought and all that is part of a cycle because everybody cannot be fit all the time. So therefore, when the drought comes or there's a flood, that was also part of a cycle, nature's cycle. But we somehow disturbed it because we put too much of, like for example, we say now there is a climate change, which is a problem. Why climate is a problem? Because there are greenhouse gases which are emitted are far more than what the atmosphere can absorb. So there are carbon sinks. Forest trees are carbon sinks. Oceans are carbon sinks. So they have the ability to absorb the carbon which goes out, but there's a limit to which they can absorb. So today they are not able to absorb it. So ultimately, this whole system was functioning, and particularly the circular part that you mentioned was perfectly so well. But we disturbed it, we destroyed it, and now we are facing the consequences. So, point I'm saying today, we are in the midst of a real crisis, honestly. And this crisis is not something which you can see in a science fiction movie, but which is something which is actually we are living with the crisis today. It's like sleeping with the enemy. There is a movie, right? Something like sleeping with the enemy. So we are actually living with a crisis on a day-to-day basis. We are not feeling it because some people are feeling it. There are people are saying that Amazon ecosystem, which survived for so many thousand millions of years, probably will be destroyed in another few hundred years. That's what everybody is saying. So we are actually in the midst of a real crisis. And a crisis of a multitude, different kinds of dimensions. But part of that we can deal with, and I think rather I was just going into the broader field. Let me come to this issue about how we deal with this challenge of very few resources and infinite demand, finite resource and infinite demand for the resources. So only way we can do it is through this process that you mentioned. Can we keep into motion the idea of what you make, and you can keep reusing it for all the times to come? Is it possible? It is definitely possible. In fact, there are now many areas in which this is functioning very well. I just give an example because I mentioned this fabric. My wife is running an NGO. She started doing something very interesting. I mean, I'm very impressed with that idea. So normally, suppose you throw it away, then some part of that you can take it out and can recycle it. But she's thinking of upcycling it. So they are doing on a working on a very interesting project to work on that. It's an environmental project. In fact, one day you should come and visit. So I was telling you about that. So we have concept of Parivartan Kendra, one for 5 villages. At 6 dimensional development, we are talking about economic, social, physical, intellectual, and environmental. And of course, 6 was spiritual. So environmental, because if you lose in natural capital, nothing is left for us. That's the only capital which is you cannot recycle. Financial capital can be created multiple times. In fact, there was a time in 2008 when we had the so-called uh, financial product, we called it derivatives, which were probably few hundred times more than the real economy. So we could create artificial money. Of course, central bank can create any amount of money, but here was an ingenious idea that from a financial product, if I give a housing loan and bank says housing loan on his books, the banks created a financial product out of that the housing loan by creating derivatives. So you can keep creating. So financial capital is unlimited. You can create it. Unlike that, natural capital is limited, and therefore we have to manage it in a proper way. So question is, therefore, what I mentioned, the only way now we can deal with this crisis that we are facing today is to manage it properly. It's sometimes when a person is suffering from a terminal disease, so doctor tell him, well, the only way I can do it is manage it. I cannot cure you, but you can manage the disease. Manage the pain management is one part, we'll do this. So I think this present crisis that we are right now in the midst of it, climate change and associated issues, only way we can deal with is by managing it. And now managing it means first and foremost, when you manage a problem, you must know the problem. How will you manage the problem? So there has to be a proper awareness that we have a huge, huge challenge that we are all working, we are facing. And if we don't act on it properly in the next, immediately, probably we may not be there at all. That's kind of a challenge that we are existential threat to the humanity, to the entire biological life. And in that, one part of that, because as I said, resources are limited and demands on those resources are infinite, unlimited. Therefore, one way we can do it is by ensuring can we keep using the same resources again and again. If you make a car, what do you make car from? You make car, you need steel. So steel, where do you get steel from? You need iron ore. Where do you get iron ore from? You get it, you mine it out. So mining is a land use change. When you do mining, the nature had created those resources, but they were not they were meant to be below the surface only. Nature obviously created fossil fuels, but they were supposed to be taken out. They were supposed to be there, but we changed it. That's a land use change. Nature had one land use in mind, and we caused a change to it. It was the forest, which nature had created. We said, oh, below the forest, there are a lot of natural resources. Let us remove the forest and they will take out the resources. So, like that, we have changed. So, land use change is cause of more emissions because they never meant to be like that. So emissions they come out, and this is also causing climate change. So therefore, now making car, if you made a car by making a mistake by taking out iron ore and converting to steel, why not you keep reusing it? Why not you put back the same car into use? And now it is happening more and more. People have started realizing it that there is no choice because we have nothing left with us. And that's something which I'm very happy that you have decided to focus on that issue of manage circular economy, managing growth and sustainability. I think that's something which I think is an extremely important aspect of a future growth strategy. We cannot have growth. See, what is growth ultimately? It is very simple. You increase your agriculture output, you increase industrial output, and you increase services, the growth happens. But ultimately, agriculture, you cannot have agriculture growth if you don't have land. You cannot agriculture unless you don't have topsoil. You cannot agriculture if you don't have water. All of that is natural capital. You cannot have industry unless you have raw material. Raw material also come from where? From the same source. So if you don't have it, it will not come. And if you don't have industry and agriculture, how can the standalone service sector survive? Because service has to, by definition, has to service something. You cannot have car service center, which is a service sector activity, unless you have car manufacturing. If you don't manufacture car, what are you going to service about? So therefore, services also are dependent on either agriculture or industry, and that both are dependent on natural resources. And therefore, we have to have a strategy for future growth, as you have mentioned. How do you make sure that this growth, and growth is necessary, we have no choice because we have to create employment opportunities, livelihood for maybe every year few crore people. Whether it's 5 crore, 10 crores, is debatable issue. But every year we have to create that. And those opportunities can come only from these three sectors. As the agriculture, as it is today, agriculture, we have had a very good growth of agriculture in the last decade, almost 4%, which is unusual because agriculture cannot grow at 10%, 11%. It is not possible. Some countries have, like Russia, when they had a sanction, not this sanction, earlier sanction, they did not, the West did not give them food products. Russia's agriculture growth was more than 10% because Russia has a huge land. Russia is the biggest country in the world. So they could do that because they have land and they have water also unlimited, almost. So I am saying today, the job, and that's what you mentioned by economy, because economy means you have to create some economic opportunities. So I think we have to have a big challenge how to create jobs in this midst of a crisis of a nature like this. And to do that, we have to think can we create jobs in different thinking differently? And that's what the circular economy will be all about. If you can actually focus on this whole concept and make circular economy as a driving force of our economic thinking, we can actually create jobs and also ensure that we don't damage our environment. And that's how we can probably, if not save ourselves completely, we can delay our lifespan of humanity. Not you and my lifespan is already decided. Whether 40, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, whatever, we'll go. But humanity has lived here for millions of years, and I hope they'll live even for many years. But that lifespan can be now extended only if we act more sensibly, more thoughtfully. And to do that, one of the activity could be this very important activity would be in the industrial space because circular economy will be largely industrial. And therefore, industry has to be circular economy driven. Then we have to start thinking not at the end of the product life, but even before the product is designed. Because at the end of the product life, only circular economy will happen. There's rather going to scrapyard, you will make it into a different product. But unless you design a product properly, as I said earlier, you will not be able to actually use that entire, all aspects of that product for reuse again for something else, for either for the same product range or for something different. And therefore, product design will become an extremely important activity for making circular economy a reality. So designing what should go into it, what kind of different components should be applied to it, what kind of chemicals we should use, what adhesive we should use, what kind of glue we should have, all of that will really become part of that entire process. And therefore, we have to start from that beginning. I'll give an example, nothing to related to this. When I was a Minister of Railways, I had a, because I'm a chartered accountant, that's a baggage I always carry. That's the problem. Because when you go there, you always look at accounts, numbers, this, numbers. So that is chartered accountant. So he's my chartered accountant. He's also. So chartered accountants have this problem of playing numbers. So I actually had, this was my old idea. I was thinking, why not make all the government accounts should be outcome oriented. When you incur expense, you should know why, what was the outcome and whether the outcome has been achieved or not. So now all the CAG audits, if you look at it, they will take out very serious objection in the accounts, government accounts. One of the main objection is that this department did not spend 40,000 crores. So I said, it's a good, what is if they don't spend the money saved? But the government money not spent. So the whole emphasis of accounting auditing, even one chartered accountant has come from Baroda, Sanjeev Shah. So you will say the emphasis is on spending. But what happens after spending? Are you getting the outcomes out of the spending or not? But how will you get the outcomes after spending the money if you have not actually thought about it even before you spend the money? And even before you spend the money, like public money particularly, you can spend the money in the, at least government money, only when you budget for it. And the budget has to be approved by the parliament. So budgeting is the most starting important point for getting the desired outcomes. So actually I started this in the railways in a small way because then of course I resigned when there was an accident. So I completed that, but I wish it would all ban railways. So same way, if you want the outcome from the expense, you have to plan when the budget is made. Same way, if you want to get a product end of the cycle, end of the life of the product, if you want to create something more out of it, it can happen only when you design it properly. So that's a very important beginning of the process of circular economy. And therefore, I think what we are designing in the past, what has gone. We cannot change it anymore. That's the reality of life. So at least why not make a beginning of a new era, new thinking by bringing in the new concept of making a product design in such a way that everything that goes into that product must be able to reuse, recycle it for something better and will not lose that because I just explained to you. See, these are huge costs that we bear, not financial cost, ecological cost. To take out, so we don't realize now we say this is something, how much this cost? 50 rupees, 100 rupees, 500 rupees, I can say like that. But entire process of metals, so metals come from below the surface. So all of that metallurgy that happens much later. But basic raw material, the metals come from it. And we have huge cost for that because we are changing in land use change. We don't realize it. So we are destroying a good part of that. And maybe that is also affecting your water bodies because the entire water flow that happens is now disturbed because of the what land use change. So I think the whole concept of we must understand that product when we make it, it looks like a very simple thing, but a back-ended part of it and the what goes into that, the cost that we incur is enormous, and some of it is so damaging that we must think about very carefully while designing a product. So if you design it properly and you say what goes into that, whether I should use it or not, what is the purpose of this, then the whole thing can change, and then my dear friend Rajivji said mentioned, and he's of course his word is the last word because he's Gandhi. So I think I we just imagine that if you don't work on it from ab initio, from the very beginning, then we'll not be able to get the kind of business. So I think our thinking has to change. Very close to this place is the National Institute of Design. So that's another very important institute of national importance, actually. So I think designing part should be the beginning process for this whole idea. So anyway, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I'm sure we all work together. This is, as I said, the Ahmedabad Management Association is the right platform to deal with these issues because climate change is actually a management issue. We have to manage it now. We have to manage it in such a way that scarce resources, how to put them into proper use, allocation of various, because the competitive demands on the same resource. Where do you put those resources so that we get the best returns and least damage? And I think hopefully all of that will happen with the kind of work that you are doing and trying to work on that. So thank you very much.
We can take some questions. I think we have about 15 minutes with us. Yeah. So you want to start, gentleman in the pink shirt? I think. All right, maybe. I think we'll need some mic. Yeah. I'll get some.
Resource is very limited, sir. If you have to make industrial development, no, it's off.
No, no, it's not. Hold close to it.
Hold it close to your mouth, sir, please.
See, resource is limited, as you have said now. Now there is two part of economy. One is agriculture, another is. Now, if you have to develop industry in the cost of agriculture, if you extend agriculture, then the industry cannot be. So how will solve the problem of this thing? Now we say that we are agriculture dependent country. Now you see most of the agricultural land has finished, forest has gone. Now how you have to compensate? This is my question. This is a contrast between agriculture and industry. If you have to develop, then all this brick shed will come out. agricultural land will be built. How will
Industry expansion. Controlling industry expansion and the cost of agricultural land.
See, actually, it's a very important issue. Why? Because we have only 2.2% of the land, only 2.2% of the world. And the same land we have to use for many purposes, of which one third of the land we have had a national forest policy. We say that we'll cover one third of India by forest. So of course, we don't have that one third covered by the forest, a different issue. But at least that's a stated policy of the country. So if you have one third, that means 2.2%, say one third, only 2.2 third of that land remains. And that same two-third land we have to use for all purposes, including housing, for infrastructure, for industry, for agriculture, and for everything else. So that's a big issue. So I had written that article some years ago in Times of India, was that you must do, that's my personal opinion, you must do a proper satellite mapping, divide the land into different parts. There are already land which is already irrigated, like in Punjab, for example. There is no point first irrigate the land and then now give it to industry or some any other purpose. So what is already irrigated, it is already so much of investment has gone into it. So it should not be used only. It should be used only for agriculture, not for any other purpose. Then there are certain land which you call wasteland. Actually, I don't believe in the concept of wasteland. There's nothing like wasteland. This, you say as agriculture waste. There's nothing agriculture waste that goes back into the soil. The soil benefits from it. So, but still, there is some element of the barren land that is not used and that probably cannot be used for agriculture. So, if you properly do the entire mapping of the entire land resource that we have, decide what should be used for what purpose, and then based on that, see, if you say no industry, who will suffer? Today we are saying agriculture. Two-thirds of the farmers in India, there's a national sample survey of India, it's not my opinion, they don't want to do farming because first, there's no enough money in agriculture. Secondly, there is no social status for farmers. If there's a girl who is even from the other farmer's family, says, I don't want to marry that boy because he's into a farmer. This is unfortunately true because there is so much uncertainties, vagaries of nature which affect agriculture. So industry is necessary. If you don't have industry, probably आप कैसे आए गाड़ी से आए होंगे स्कूटर से तो वो इंडस्ट्री नहीं होगी तो आप आए थे कैसे यहाँ पे इंडस्ट्री होती ही नहीं तो आपको आना भी मुश्किल हो जाता था सो इंडस्ट्री इज नेसेसरी फॉर मेनी थिंग्स सो इंडस्ट्री नहीं होगी तो कुछ भी नहीं होगा जॉब्स के लिए तो चाहिए बट फॉर अवर टुडेज लाइफस्टाइल is completely dependent on industry. If I understand 11,000 years to the agriculture came into being only 11,000 years ago. Before there was no agriculture in the world. Agriculture also is one of the land use change incidentally. But agriculture तो अभी हमने we are accepted 11,000 years के पहले हम लोग घूमते थे इधर उधर तो संभव था अभी तो पॉसिबल ही नहीं है we need industry so therefore the conflict is not with industry and agriculture. It is the real challenge is making a public policy where we don't create a conflict at all. If we plan it properly based on the best use that land can be put to, the best fertile land should go for agriculture, undoubtedly. The land which cannot be used for any other purpose can be used for either infrastructure or for industry or for something else. So you must do this national planning of resources in a proper manner. Then only this problem will be solved. But the problem is right. I'm not denying what you're saying is wrong, is correct. But the solution can come only in this form. Or,
Sir, it was a wonderful lucid talk by you. Sir, one of the major conflict between the developed countries and developing country is climate finance. They are at the different level of development, but they have damaged the environment, emission and everything. So what is the way forward?
this is all the so-called concept of developing and developed countries in relation only in context of climate change has undergone a sea change. See, China is supposed to be a developing country under the climate change negotiation because there was a Kyoto Protocol in which there are Annex 1 countries and non-Annex 1 countries. So Annex 1 countries are the countries which are supposed to be developed countries who cause climate change and which is true. There's nothing, that classification is not wrong. But after that Kyoto Protocol, China has become $19 trillion economy. China is the second largest economy of the world. China emits more than any other country in the world. So now you talk about China would say, I'm a developing country, give me finance. So China's per capita income is more than some of the so-called developed countries' per capita income. So these ideas, these are all political debates. Financing developed country, developing countries must finance. This is true. I also said the same thing as the environment minister. Because I'm a developing country, you must give money, give me technology. That's okay. But these are all rhetorical statements. See, ultimately, you definitely need finance. That's a commitment made by the developed countries. They are never given any money. They talk about now. They are talking about $500 billion. They'll put it. I don't. So I said, there is no. You should not blame them because it takes so much of time to count 500 billion. So they must be counting. So they'll take some time, maybe another 10, 20 years before they can count it. Then we can see something probably. So this is all. Honestly speaking, we have to find solutions without getting into the rhetorical statement because see the so-called developed countries like UK is one of the developed countries which is in recession today. They have the economy which is declining economy. So they are committed to give, they are supposed to give the money. But there is nothing. See, I owe Janil 1 crore. I know I accept I go 1 crore. भाई मेरे पॉकेट में 1 लाख रुपए भी नहीं तो उसको 1 करोड़ दूंगा कहाँ से मैं? So ultimately, see, these are the statements which will keep coming and we can always say ऐसा देना चाहिए, ऐसा देना. So all theoretical. उसमें कुछ. So we have to find out some real practical solutions.
Hello. Hello. Yes, sir. Sir, as a chartered accountant, you rightly mentioned, yeah, there are sustainability reporting standards now for the industry. How what kind of environmental support you are doing into. So you already mentioned that there is a crisis for the land in India, but now the MNCs are having their subsidiary companies overseas, like the Africas and other countries where the natural resources are more available. So can we have some sort of solutions like that if they are having a subsidiary and they are doing something for the environmental in the other country because we are lack of the land. So that can be mitigate at this at the global level that some other countries land which we are using for the industry purpose by taking the advantage by setting up the subsidiary over there and doing sustainable the resources green resources over there using that and proving ourselves that as an Indian we are contributing something by doing the emissions lower emissions in the that criteria.
It's a very important issue because we need. If you are saying that my company is green company, what basis you are saying? Because you have put on outside my company's premises, I have painted the entire wall green, so now become green company. Does it become green like? So ultimately, to claim to be green, there has to be an objective standards, and that should come from reporting. Now, this GRI, there is a institute, I think, based in Netherlands. They have certain standards. I am of the opinion, which I am telling my institute for many years. In fact, we have developed something. Incidentally, I started that. Was that we must have internationally accepted standards. We should prepare. And I'm not saying we should prepare just because we are great or something. We take everybody along and prepare something, but for our own good to begin with, because all companies then can legitimately, if they are doing good, the standards will be there. It will also motivate other companies which are not doing to adopt them. So this is absolutely necessary. And I agree with you that standards, by definition, must be standardized. Then only they become standard. So I think you should really use them. I'm absolutely. I'm just came to my mind, my friend. You asked me about the finance. See, instead of fighting these wars and spending billions of dollars on these wars, if they had put this money into fighting another war, climate war, it would have been helpful for them, helpful for others. So I think, but unfortunately, this is what it is. So we are actually in the and if you ask public opinion in those countries, they are also not in favor of it. But how does it matter? They will so they so this and also this so-called developing country developed now things have changed considerably. See, China claims there was under the Kyoto Protocol there were three market-based mechanisms. One was joint implementation, one was emission trading, and one was clean development mechanism. So that meant that you can actually get money from developed countries for starting a project which reduces greenhouse gas emission. If you start something in your country and you have you can actually have a validation that this has reduced your emission, then you get a. So it was called clean development mechanism. Which country got the highest clean development mechanism? You know, China. Because China says, I am a developing country. So China, why develop? It is a developing country technically under that protocol, but it's the second largest economy of the world and the largest emitter. I'm not against making a political statement against China. I'm saying the reality of life is such that China is a developing country which has highest emission, and Norway may not be there. I'm giving example. Norway is not a next one country, but which is developed country so-called, but with almost no emissions. So they should pay and China should receive. Is makes what sense does it make?
Need mic to Karthik sir, please. Thank you.
Thank you for this wonderful lecture. I was asking what type of policy interventions can a government make to help this movement towards the circular economy? And a second related sort of question is that in India, the circularity, a large part is played by what is called the informal sector, which is relatively poor. We never called them part of the circular economy, but they are, and today they are being recognized. So is this a good opportunity to raise that level of that part of that circle, if you like, which is the informal sector, and bring them into much more what we call developers? We go towards the Viksit Bharat 2047. How do we do this?
Look, I think a very good. Actually, let me start with the second one. See, actually, it will be interesting. The so-called informal economy, at least one example. Who picks all the plastic of the thrown away all over, littered all over the country? Are these poor people. So they are the real climate warriors. They go and pick it up and for hardly anything. I mean, if you watch their plight, they wander for at least 10, 12 hours a day, carrying and beginning, of course, that's an empty bag, but eventually the bags get filled, so they still carry that. And sometimes not wearing any proper footwear and all that. And what do they get? 6,000-7,000 rupees a day. In a month. So hardly anything at the end of it. But you are right. This opportunity to actually incorporate into the service is very good. I fully agree with you, because that's something which is they are still not part of a vested system as such, vested system in that sense. So I think they're very good. I fully agree. The second part that you said is the costing part, which again is very important. Actually speaking, I'll give an example. When I was a Minister of Environment, when we met for the first time, actually 98. So you can imagine how old I am. I became minister for the first time in 96. And 98 means 26 years ago I was Minister of Environment. So actually I said that time, again, the baggage of being a CA, I said, why not put cost onto some of the resources? For example, one is costing can be of different types of cost. One is the historical cost, which already incurred, that's why it's historical cost. Other cost is the opportunity cost. When you actually, you bought this glass, so glass costs 10 rupees maybe. So that's a historical, we have incurred 10 rupees. So if it breaks, 10 rupees gone. So that's very simple to know. But suppose if I break this glass, and that's the only way I could have had a water to drink. And now I am dying for water. I cannot drink it because there is no glass, there is no container which can hold my water. So that's the opportunity cost. That I have lost this opportunity of drinking, then maybe I will die because of dehydration or something. So I did this exercise for forest land. I said, if you take water body, if you lose a water body, what is the cost of that? How can you ascertain a cost of a water body? Because I cannot recreate a water body. You can actually technically, yes, we have artificial lakes, we have artificial ponds, we can. But actually, the water body is not recreatable. And therefore, when you lose it, it's an opportunity cost. What you lost. So costing has to be taken into account not only from perspective of historical, but also from the perspective of opportunity cost. And if you put that, so I said, forest land, I started exercise incidentally. I said, why not do this forest land costing? So because everybody wants forest land, that's easier to get because not encourage most of it. And therefore you can get it and start construction, start factory that you're asking about agriculture. But आप पूछ रहे थे एग्रीकल्चर इंडस्ट्री का लेकिन फॉरेस्ट और बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है सो उससे भी बड़ा है एग्रीकल्चर जाएगा तो एग्रीकल्चर दूसरी जगह हो सकता है फॉरेस्ट जाएगा तो हो ही नहीं सकता सो actually we did that and then I started something natural resource accounting because you can do costing when you know what you have no? Then you put a cost to it if you don't have inventory of what you have so I think that again we have started doing that as I said see this needs a lot of long term attention when you lose you're not there in that position probably your successor may not be that interested to pursue such issues बोलते ऐसे ग्लैमरस नहीं क्या है नेचुरल रिसोर्स अकाउंटिंग कॉस्टिंग बिस्टिंग छोड़ दो उसको इसको पता नहीं चला let me do something एक इधर एक inauguration उधर उधर photo opportunity हो जाए काम हो जाए so this is a but you are absolutely right that this can start with proper costing exercise because once you know the cost of it then you know what you lost right so you are absolutely right
Yes, sir. First thing, really delighted to hear you. That was wonderful. And दूसरा चीज़ ये है कि in terms of the waste management जो हो रहा है, we do not see much focus in terms of the waste management happening in India. There was initially some talk of some technology coming in from Norway, Sweden, wherever it is in India to convert the waste into energy or use it. But still, is there anything that's happening in the organization in the country? We may not. I may be a little ignorant about it, but in terms of ensuring waste management so that the sustainability aspect is little taken care of.
speaking so what is the question? What is happening
Yes.
Okay. See, firstly, there are many things happening, but I don't know whether they are commensurate with the challenge. So, we space manage. For example, again, I'm giving my personal example. Wait a minute. Personal example. We made a first municipal waste management law, solid waste management law. We made. So that was under the Environment Protection Act. There's a delegated legislation, so minister could make it administratively. So I had done that. So we said collection, segregation, disposal, everything was done. But it was never implemented, like most of the laws. So we are very good in passing the laws, but not so good in implementing them. So therefore, this was not implemented. But if you look at it, in my opinion, what is waste? See, this whole idea, if you really look at it, waste management presupposes that there is something waste. Is there anything waste really? In Indian context, if you go to villages, nothing is wasted. If you go to a village, now of course we have got plastic, etc. That's something which is not. Otherwise, my own ancestor house in Konkan, which of course was my Lok Sabha constituency for 4 terms. My grandmother, in her backyard, our house was 350 years old. Her backyard, there was a big, what do you call it? बड़ा बनाते हैं ना खड्डा उसको that trench no taka actually this is a you dig into you create a she used to dig and keep a big and everything that we used to eat we used to go and dispose what was left had to go and put it there it was very strict rule in the house my grandmother will enforce it unlike the laws that we make she used to enforce it that it has to happen and once this was full, that would be some trees will be planted or some biocomposting will happen and then we'll move into that. So just imagine where is the waste? Actually speaking, there is no waste actually speaking. So this whole concept of waste is something which we have to see in terms of changes that have happened culturally in India. Even same in China. There was a saying, very interesting saying. The Chinese would say that if you come to my house for dinner, then don't go before using my toilet. Because whatever eaten, when it digested, let it be left here. So I will make use of that from the human waste also. So that is how their thinking was. So this is our Eastern thinking. So what has changed now is our culture has changed, our thinking has changed. So if you really want to bring about the changes of that kind, we have to change our lifestyle. So waste what you call it is up. Now, of course, but that having said that, the reality, as you said, there is a waste available because so much is thrown out, so much is goes on plastic bottle, this and that. That, as I said, all these scavengers who go around and try to pick it up, so they're Herculean task. What they do, you cannot imagine their contribution. And there are few lakhs of people in India. They're called waste workers. Few lakhs. Unbelievable. And the old women, young, all of them, they move around, collect and take it out. And so therefore, actually speaking, in India, this the government doesn't do this. This is all done by these poor people, which goes and collect it, brings it to the one common collection center where there's an aggregator who aggregates it and then sells it to the factory and does that. So actually, the waste that way is something which you have to see in the context. It's actually relative term. What is waste? And therefore, I was saying wasteland. People say there's a wasteland. I don't see there is wasteland. Where is the wasteland? Something is the other is used for something else. So therefore, even I'll tell you so when I was chemicals and fertilizer minister, so they say there's a lot of agriculture waste. So what do you mean by agriculture waste? See, they say, like, for example, of course, there is a reality that Punjab, they burn it, all the residue, agriculture residue, and that's how this Delhi's whatever. Sorry. So in agriculture waste, in a sense, yes, because that happens, but actually speaking, the same agriculture waste, if you allow it to go into the biomass, it will actually help to create more nutrition to the soil. That's how the nature has devised. Where the leaves fall, it goes back into the soil and it regenerates soil. So waste in that sense. So there is a waste, unfortunately, because of our cultural changes and others. But actually speaking, there is no reason why there should be a waste. No, it is all, see, it's matter of, as I said, we made this legislation, a delegated legislation. In which we said collection, segregation. So segregation is important. So then we know exactly what kind of waste we have and what kind of use that it can be put to. So it's all doable. Honestly speaking, this is a management issue. So it's about management also is the right thing because it's a management. If you create an entire cycle around it and the entire system, the entire system should be designed in such a way. So you wanted to ask something.
Yeah, sir. Oh, thank sir, your lecture was really lucid and very relevant to the times we are going through. So my question to you is, your take on my question, which I want to hear is, what can be the role of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and others to boost this circular economic from waste to profitability to even prosperity? I mean, that was the topic of this Vibrant Gujarat, the waste to prosperity. So how can these systems can be enhanced with the emerging technologies?
You tell me, who develops technology? The development of technology is not by some companies or some corporation. So they will develop it and then they'll come to you to register it as an IP, right? So that's a different matter, end of it. But they are not developing technology developed by human beings. And where does human beings, so what is the laboratory for that technology? The human mind is a laboratory for that technology. So if you want to do this, it's not some rocket science. It's not what Vikram Sarabhai was doing something incredible. That is space science and all that is a different. This is very simple. So if you change your mind, technology is not something difficult for this. It's only question of thinking that I want to do, and you will always find a solution to this. So there's no question of new technology or some high-tech technology for this. This is a question of application of mind that I must do this and this is something which is really so. Segregation. No. See, that again is not something very complicated. Actually now it has started happening in many places. Everybody says put your biological waste separate, medical waste incidentally again I admit a lot. So medical waste separate, but medical waste will happen only in hospital. But in household, now most of this is segregated, supposed to be segregated. It's not everywhere it is happening, but it's happening, started happening. So it's not a very technological issue. But you're right in a way. If somebody can develop a better technology, why not? I mean, this is possible. I'm not technologist. But if we can develop something which can happen easily, why not?
One point.
हाँ बोलिए बोलिए.
I have got a vital point, which actually connected with the employment. Some speaker on, I think on day before yesterday, they speak about the livelihood. We always speak about the FDI. Why only multinational come in India? Why not Indian businessmen go to the other countries? Have we not got the legible technologies about this? Our Prime Minister has, every time he has said, we should develop our own technology so we can capture the market of other countries. China is going everywhere. They are capturing the market. Why not Indians? We are lacking in technology. What your government should do about this? This is my question.
अच्छा है, क्वेश्चन नहीं है, आपका सुझाव और आपके सुझाव के बहुत अच्छा है.
I think there's no doubt about your question there. So, sir says he has nothing to add. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 7:15. Time to say thanks. One, two, of course, our speaker of the day, Mr. Suresh Prabhu. This is the second time. Um, Second time I am hearing him in last 3 years. In fact, it's a bit of coincidence. I would want to remember two gentlemen here. One, sir, in the memory of whom this endowment lecture fund was set up. It's Dr. R.L. Sanghvi. He passed away before about 4 months from now. He was one of the finest principals of the HL College of Commerce. And he said that there has to be lectures on economics, and we did this lecture as a part of that endowment fund. In fact, the last lecture that Sri Suresh Prabhu sir delivered was at the HL College, and that was as a part of SV Desai Memorial Lecture. So two principals of the same college, and he has done the lectures on economy for them. But one thing I must say, such a learned man, handled 10 plus ministries, 30 years in parliament, was one of the youngest ever chairman of a large cooperative bank, which we all know as Saraswat Bank. At the age of 31, he was chairman of a cooperative bank, that too in Maharashtra. Not an easy thing, and a chartered accountant. He can make things as complicated, as intelligent as we want it to be, but I think is as simple so that everybody can understand. That is one of the geniuses that I always find, that whatever he says, I think is as simple as it can get. But lovely talk. I think few things to take away. One, of course, cradle to cradle rather than cradle to grave. I think that was one takeaway for us, certainly, sir. Of course, always a key issue. How do we design things very differently? I mean, rather than thinking about the dealing with outcomes, how can we design things in a way that certain outcomes can come? And Karthik sir is here. Sir, the project at CE that you did, thinking of Kachro as Rochak, I think that is also very relevant for the circular economy. How can we look at waste as something which is interesting and waste to prosperity? So I think, and then again, looking at things from a different perspective, looking at scavengers rather as climate warriors, I think is another thing. And we talk a lot about waste. I think you also need to look about design. I think one of the things I want to leave us with is, so every time we drink a coffee on airport, there are 3 bins which says wet, dry, and paper. And I don't know where to put the coffee mug, because it's also paper, it's also wet, and it's also dry because I've consumed. So, I mean, where do we, educate people? Where do the waste segregation happens as it should be? And I think in the last session at COP28, Sunil Parekh also mentioned of climate finance, which sir also rightly said, climate finance is not going to come, not from the developed countries. That's the least thing we can explain. The only way is the market-based solution. So I think the world of business, the world of management, and the world of business will have to find solutions to that.
Sorry,
Yes, sir. You want to add? All right, yeah. So with that, thank you so much once again. But before that, the sir has to add something. Yes.
But see, let me tell you, I'm not saying that climate finance should come only from market-based instrument. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, see, it's actually principle is polluters to pay. The today's climate change is happening because of historical emissions. The emissions we started after industrial revolution. So those who participate in industrial revolution only have caused this climate, and therefore the science has proved that those countries who have caused it, so therefore there is a list of those countries, which is in that Kyoto Protocol Annex 1 countries. Even in United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change before that. So this is an accepted fact. So they must pay for it. I'm not doubting that. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying while we should continue to engage and try to find out from them, the climate is not waiting because of that. किसी का husband wife का झगड़ा चालू है, तो father-in-law is waiting, mother-in-law is waiting. ठीक है, कभी ना कभी solve होगा. I can understand that problem. This is not a problem of husband and wife fight that we can, oh, होने वाला है ऐसा. We cannot leave it at that, isn't it? We should try to solve this problem because this is something which is actually killing people day by day. So I think this is something which is a real issue. That's why what I'm saying is while we continue with that rhetorical fight, we should also find out solution to find climate. So I'm not opposed to only, I'm not saying market is the only way we can actually solve it. I'm not saying that. Secondly, I'm just saying because you asked that question, who stops us? These are the people who are collecting million, probably thousands of tons of waste. Not only plastic, they also collect bottles, I mean, glass and everything else, and so many other things. Even electronic waste, they collect all that. Why they should not? Who stops us? Where is the finance required? If we give them 25,000 rupees a month, insurance for them, is it something? How much money will be required for that? So is it not a climate work? So where is the climate finance for it? Why not we do something like this? So I think we should. It's a question of being sensitive about the problems that these people are facing, honestly speaking, and try to understand. See, climate finance is a complicated issue. We think of billions, 500 billion, 600 billion. Somebody said 1 trillion. Nothing. We are just words. तो कोई पैसा भी नहीं आ रहा है, कुछ नहीं. वो बिलियन का 500 हो गया, 600 हो गया, 7 नहीं. लास्ट टाइम कितना बोला था मैंने? 500. चलो 600 बिलियन बोल देते हो. बोलने को क्या जाता है? तो कुछ नहीं. हमारे मराठी में कहावत है, वो खाने को कुछ नहीं है, बोलने के लिए राइस भी है, बोलने के लिए करी भी है. वो बोलने के लिए कुछ है नहीं, उसमें दिखता प्लेट में कुछ भी नहीं है. बोलने के लिए राइस है, बोलने के लिए करी. सो ऐसा ही चल रहा है. सो व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज we need to do that internationally. Absolutely no doubt about it. At the same time, we should try to find out something, and this is a very good example. I think there may be few lakhs of people, all the country, and the kind of life they live, and their contribution, what they do, nobody else is doing it. No industry is doing as much for the environment as these people are doing.
So on that note, thank you so much. But I think most of you have done the feedback form. If somebody is missing, please fill that form at AMA. We take the feedback quite seriously. We read it, we review it as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Suresh, sir. And we look forward to having you once again. Thank you.